right, all
All
right,
right.
all right. We are back. We are back with another episode of Thought Candy. I'm Mr. Millionaire Mindset. I got my man
Philly's in the
Philly.
building. What's good,
Sir,
people? What's
we
happening?
we got a couple other good brothers that have joined us this evening.
Oh, we got
Um,
some guests.
yeah, we got some guests on here. The resident expert, Thought Candy, part of the Thought Candy posse, Mr. Will Stirrup, Big Willie Stirrup is in the building, and we got a new face to the podcast.
Yes,
One
we
of our
do.
Shizzle.
brothers that is definitely not unfamiliar to us, maybe new to some of you out there, but
The
he goes
Shizzle.
by the name of Malachi. How you doing, brother?
What's up, man? It's all
Malachi
good.
Mitchell in the building.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's M60. That's M6 ITY.
There it is. There it is. We're gonna give you guys a chance to kind of shout out what it is that you're doing towards the end of the podcast. But we want to go ahead and get started today. The goal of Thought Candy, you guys, is to motivate, inspire, educate, and hopefully we'll say something that you can relate to in this podcast this evening. So uh, we want to get right on into it. All right. How does that sound to you, Philly?
Sounds good. We don't got a lot of time,
All right.
but we definitely gonna sit there and bring you something that's gonna be thought provoked. Like you said, Mr. Slaughter, and we got two gentlemen that we both know very well that'll hopefully
Absolutely.
sit there and stimulate our minds as well as we jump right on into it. So, what you got for us, Mr. Millionaire Mindset? What is the topic of the day, sir?
Topic of today, pretty serious. Does the struggle of a black man continue? I think everybody on the podcast right now, on the panel,
Oh,
can relate to being
can
black, right?
can you run that one? Can you run that one back? Run that one back. Say that again.
Does the struggle of a black man continue?
You can put an exclamation point on that one.
Right. With a
Continue.
question mark and an exclamation.
Right. Right.
And I
Continue
ditto
from.
both of you brothers. I
Continue.
ditto that.
Well, hold on. But does it continue from what?
Way
The
back.
past?
From the time that we were shorties to now.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right.
Well, some were shorties
Yeah.
before we were shorties, I would assume.
Absolutely.
I ain't put it out there to
Right.
nobody.
We all at different levels of this blackness.
Yes, sir.
But-
Yes, sir. Hey, let's go ahead and crack that egg open, man, and talk a little bit about it then.
All right, all right. So the questions that I want to run down, because we always like to kind of put it out there ahead of time. So some of you may be thinking and want to chime in, and we always welcome the comments and the feedback once you see this podcast. What challenges have you faced? How did it make you feel? And in spite of it all, what are the solutions to us not losing who we are as black men?
So we just gonna tackle the first question.
You got it. You know how we
Which
do it.
is-
We break them down one at a time. What are the
Okay.
challenges that you face? So anybody want to go ahead and chime in? We'll just say our guest first, newest to the podcast, Mr. Malachi Mitchell. What challenges have you faced being a black man, whether it was from the time that you were a young boy to now, or you choose? What are the challenges that you feel you faced being black?
That's a good question. And I appreciate being on the Thought Candy with my brothers from another's. That's a question that, far as I'm concerned, me personally, because the way I was raised and how I saw life through my parents' eyes and how they were, the only struggles I saw, far as myself, was the struggles of my dad. I personally didn't have those kind of struggles. My mind might be on a different flip side. I didn't have those kind of struggles that most black men, quote unquote, have today in the inner city, because my dad and my mom both, I guess it was their struggles that they decided they didn't want their sons to have to go through many of the struggles they went through. Yeah, my dad, he went through racism on his job, in the Navy. And, it was a lot going on back then that he would testify about. And that's all that I would see and hear, was how they were suppressing him because he was the first Black man, working for the city of San Diego. And when he was rising up through the ranks, the city of San Diego, when he got out the Navy, it was like big news. Every time he did something with the city of San Diego, the news reporters were out there taking pictures of him, putting him in the paper, saying, hey, this Black man here is being promoted to this position. He's being promoted. And I'm like, well, why they got to shine so much light on you? You're just a man just like anybody else. You work hard. You went to school 10 years at night school to get your degrees. And here, you got to the highest level in the city of San Diego as a general park supervisor. And those are the kind of struggles that I saw were, being raised in the home. But me personally, I have to say that I'm blessed straight across the board. I can't hear him. Can you hear me? Because I can't hear.
Yeah, here we go.
Philip.
I got
there. You
right.
go.
So my question is this then. My question. So from you growing up to a shorty, like Sean said, up into a teenager, until a young adult, you never witnessed racism. You never witnessed a struggle from your personal.
Isn't that amazing? How many brothers can actually say that?
Exactly. I'm asking
how many brothers
question
can say that.
Yeah,
I have to say that I'm blessed on that side. Now, granted, I've dealt with some knuckleheads in my time, but not to the extent to where somebody was going to call me out my name. One, I didn't present myself as a regular knucklehead or a saggy pants wearing brother. I did some dirt in my time. I sold drugs, the gangs, and all of that.
We got some feedback, y'all. We're gonna have to mute until you have something to say, because it's some feedback. We want to keep it clean, right?
So, I did some dirt in my time, but however, I knew how to present myself in a way to where I wasn't going to be presented or be approached by the authorities or anybody else to say, hey, where you going, boy? What you doing out this late at night, boy? I didn't have that issue. I was blessed in that side of it. I was slick, I was smooth, or whatever you want to call it. I knew how to get underneath the radar and get around all of that. So me personally dealing with any type of racism in my face, I have to say I must be a special breed, because I didn't have to deal with that personally, just from other people's testimonies of what they've dealt with on their jobs, at their school, wherever they might go. So I don't know what to tell you, brothers. I'm blessed on that side. Now I've dealt with issues with my friends and how they've dealt with racism or the inequality of whoever they were. I've dealt with that side. I had to encourage them, but they look at me like a dinosaur. I'm like, hey, what can I say? I just didn't have it.
Okay, we got you. Let's keep going round robin. Mr. Will Stirrup, we want to make sure that we check on you as well. Was there any type of challenges that you faced as a Black man that you want to share? And let's keep in mind, we have 2 other sections of this question, so let's keep it rolling.
I will be straight to the point. First of all, I have to say, Mr. Malachi, man, you got to be like what they call like a unicorn, something that we've never seen. Because to be honest with you, I believe that every Black person in America has been involved with some type of racism. It's whether or not we recognize it or not.
Right.
We may not know what they're doing or working on behind the scenes. I've had some friends that were of the Caucasian persuasion that were supposed to have been my friends. And I worked with these guys for like 20-something odd years. Never broke bread with them. He said, well, yeah, I've known you for all these years. But was I ever invited over to his home? He lived in a different community. And I know by where he lived at, that community, how they looked at us. But like I said, yes, I have been a part of the whole racism thing. I've seen all of the riots and the things like that, and I'll share with you guys one incident that happened to me when I was 16 years old. I'm from Miami, Florida, and Miami is not considered a part of the traditional South, like Alabama, Mississippi. We were supposed to be a little bit more, you know, up, a little different, kind of like the South, Northern South or whatever. We were supposed to be a little bit more advanced. And I was like any typical kid. I would go to the football games, and I went to the Orange Bowl to watch, the football games and everything. And, me and my buddies, we were, we jumped the fence and we get on the fence just to watch the game. We didn't think we were doing it. That was what we did. Well, we were caught. They caught us, and I'll never forget, it was 7 police officers, and they caught us, and they called us names and everything, but one of them was black. They looked at him, and he kind of knew, sort of like he knew what to do.
Did you say they called you names?
Yeah, they called me names, the N-word, all of the names. We don't have to, go over. We all know what they called us. And they beat us. And I got kneed in the groin. I got bitten on my neck. My arm twisted back where I couldn't move this muscle for over a year. And, and they threatened to cut our genitals off and throw us in the Miami River at the time. Now, I thought we were supposed to be beyond that. I was a kid, I grew up in an all-black neighborhood. And I'll be short and get to the point, Mr. Sauter. But here's the thing. I went to my mother, and I was upset because I'm thinking, hey, we got to do something about this. And they actually blindfolded us while they beat us, and they were talking. I don't know if they were trying to scare us or anything, but I don't know if they were going to actually do it. But I feel like I got away with that, with my life. We went into the police department. I saw another white face, and I'm thinking, oh, we're safe. I'm going to tell this guy what happened. And he looked at me, and he said, I said, hey, look, man, you see here, right here, he bit me right here, he hit me right there. And he looked at the cop, and he said, hey, do you see any bruises? And the guy said, I can't see, he's too black. It doesn't show up. It don't show up on those people. And right then and there, I knew that I couldn't win. But my mother told me, she said, there's no sense in taking it to the police officer. He let you go. You didn't, they knew. She said, you can't win. And I'm like, what do you mean we can't win? Because I'm being naive. She said, you just can't win. She said, son, if you walk in the streets and this guy sees you again, the next time he pick you up, you might not come home.
But do you believe what your mama said? Do you believe that you can't win? You believe that the black man can't win?
No, well, I felt that the system would help me. I felt like I knew it was wrong. I felt like, that we could go to court and we can get it all taken care of. But here's the thing. She was afraid for me. She was afraid for me because I still had to go to school. I still had to walk the streets. I still had to do everything in that community. And they picked me up in our community.
She already knew as a mom that you were in danger and that you were a target of some sort. You know what I mean? Right. And so it was already something that she had experienced where she was afraid for you and your life potentially.
Yeah, she was trying to protect me.
Tell me something. And let's go into that question too. How did it make you feel when this happened?
Well, I felt powerless. Because imagine being blindfolded, handcuffed, and you don't see anything, and you got 5 police officers hitting you. You don't know who's hitting you, and then you don't know where you're at. All you knew was you felt the car moving. You know you went somewhere. They're talking about doing these things to you. So at first I felt powerless, and then I felt degraded, with the names that were being called. And I felt bad for my mother because she had no power to help us. So she just wanted to make sure I stayed alive. So yeah, I felt degraded and powerless.
Wow.
Now that's not
That is
everybody's
something.
experience. Now I'm not saying that with everybody, but I could have been a George Floyd before George Floyd.
That's why I asked, what did you experience? This is more on a personal level. We're not talking generalization. We're talking about specific experiences. Philly, you go ahead and chime in.
I ain't got enough time. You already know me. Look, yes, the name states where I'm from. You know,
Right.
you gave me the name. So yeah, at a young age, I mean, yeah, 12, 13, 14, 15. I didn't know no better when I was young. Yes, man, been locked up. I mean, over something that I did not do, you know. Drugs planted in my uncle's car. Yes, when you talk about the things that had happened to me, how I relate to it, I relate to it very, very well. But my thing is this is why I think we're having this discussion is, yeah, how did it make me feel? I'm gonna go ahead and go to answer number 2 as well. Yeah, enraged. I think everybody handles it a little differently. You know, as a 13-year-old kid being locked up in the back of a cop car, being accused for knocking somebody over the head, knowing you didn't do it. And man, thank God that we had good people. And I'm gonna say this, you know, no disrespect to anybody, but good white people. It's not, it wasn't all black. You know, the owner of the store came to me, came to my cousin and said, no, it wasn't them. It wasn't me and my cousin. It was some other knucklehead that ran right down the street, and I seen him. But I had the same type of shirt on, which was a white t-shirt, and I had some jean shorts. So first thing they're gonna think is, hey, it's a black kid, and he was darker than I am. And man, thanks to God that, you know, we didn't end up getting put away, because I could have been put away easy for 5 to 7 years, a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah. How many times have we fit the description, supposedly?
Thank you.
Right.
Just
That's one of the struggles.
Oh, they
we always
say we
fit the description, right? We
they
always
say we
fit the
description.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying that it's true, but I'm saying that they always say that we fit the description.
Right.
Yeah. Malachi, unmute yourself. I just want to keep the sound squared away.
That was one thing that I was experiencing early on. I guess I was in my early 30s. You know, we talk about far as some of the things that I may not have experienced because of the way I was raised, you know, because of my parents, you know, dad's being a pastor and all that, you know, coming out of a pastor's home, PK, preacher's kid. But there was one particular instance, I don't know if you guys remember, back in the day when they had the Claremont Raper. It was a brother that was in the area of Claremont, California. And at the time, I was working for the city of San Diego. I was throwing trash in that area. And I got called in one of the lineups. And they brought me downtown to San Diego jail, took me in the room, had me in a lineup, and I'm like, you know, what's up? You know, what's the deal? You know, nobody's really saying anything. You know, my supervisor just said, hey, they need you down here, down to San Diego Police Department. I'm like, okay, you know, because I knew I didn't do anything. So they put me in a lineup. They took my spit, saliva. They took pictures of me. They took my height. They had me in a lineup, you know, to pick me out. And that's when I found out what I was really there for. Somebody said, and here I am, a trash man, throwing trash, when I got time to rape somebody. And so they said, well, I looked like the young brother that was raping women in the Claremont area. And I was like, really? So that was one of those cases where, oh, you look like so-and-so because you black. Really? Come on.
So many times we've gotten caught up in that type of scenario where it's like you fit the description. And everybody hasn't survived that, fitting the description. Some of these gun happy, gun toting cops have killed, not necessarily shot them, but maybe beat them to death, because they thought it was the person and they were gung ho and ready to, save the world type of thing. I grew up here in my teens, but prior to that, I was south side of Chicago. So, I mean, I'm like Philly. You can imagine some of the things that I've experienced and seen as a little kid, and I think to this day, they still have pockets of Chicago where you're not supposed to technically be, right? What kind of sense is that? We live in America, but the unfortunate part is that racism is still alive and well, and there's certain areas that you don't need to be after dark, or even in the daytime for that matter. I went to school across the tracks. I think we lived on like 91st and Paulina, and I had to walk to school across the tracks into the white neighborhood, right? And and when you live in some of these inner cities, you know what pockets are where, what's Latino, what's Black, what's this, right? And so I went to school in this white neighborhood, and we used to get chased back across the tracks almost like every day, every other day. They hurling stuff, they calling us names. I don't know if anyone ever got caught. I know damn well I wasn't getting caught. They had to catch me. I was too fast, but
Hold on.
just
You
the
had your
experience.
you had your PT runners on, dub.
I was gone in them pro kids. I was gone in them zips, I was gone in them zips. I was rolling, but I'm just saying, we laugh about it, and you look back at it like, wow, how crazy was this? It's almost as crazy as the gang culture and somebody claiming a street they don't own. These people didn't even want you walking on the streets past their house, and you go to school at a place in their area, and they're like, "What are you doing over here?" And chasing you, and we had to go back across the tracks to go to our neighborhood, which was still a nice neighborhood, but it wasn't their neighborhood. And the tracks happened to be the divider of that neighborhood. Coming up, it was a lot of situations and scenarios with Pops being military that I, once we left Chicago, went overseas or to a place where I might have been one of the only Black kids. Now, the difference is it was some flavor that related to Black, but they weren't Black. So I was in a lot of situations where I might have been the only Black kid. My roots from Chicago kept me grounded to my Blackness and who I am. How did that stuff make me feel when it happened? It was crazy, but I was like, I won't let them catch me. They're not gonna get a chance to hit on me or beat on me because you got to catch me first.
Well, let me ask you. Let me ask you. You said something about you being from Chicago. So you were all. Does that mean you were always kind of like in a defensive? You had like a defensive mechanism on you, like, hey, you was always like head, like we call it head on swivel, opposed
Absolutely.
to yeah.
Absolutely. When you grow up in an environment where you always have to stay alert and on point because you don't know what's going on. You don't know if somebody's shooting, if somebody's trying to rob you, if somebody's trying to kidnap you. You don't know what's going on, and many of us across the country are on alert and head on swivel like that when we go through these communities because anything can happen. So you just stay ready. Even growing up in Southeast San Diego, anything could pop off at any given time at many parties and stuff, at many beach parties, at many little house parties. Something popped off and somebody started shooting or fighting or got stabbed or whatever the case may be. And you just learn to know the signs. It's almost like warfare. It's urban warfare.
It is warfare.
Is it good to be like that though? Is it good to always be on the defense all the time?
No, I would say no, but you just have to know when to shut it on and off, right? You don't, and that never let them see you sweat type of thing. You can't show it on your face. You almost have to have a poker face, but you got to be ready for anything. And depending on the environment you're in, you have to know when to turn it on and turn it off because unfortunately, or I would say fortunately, we come from a different side of what the world is kind of portrayed as. And so we have to know how to turn it on and off in order to navigate through this life that we have as Black men.
Let me ask you, then we can open it up. We can go somewhere else. Let me ask, let's say Becky. I'm just using Becky as the name Becky. Becky's going to invite you to her little pool party. She works with you and she lives in La Jolla. Cool, no problem. You going out there with Becky and you taking the wifey out there. Do you have your head on swivel? You in La Jolla, do you keep, or is your head on swivel now? Or you got that defensive shield up when you going over to Becky's pool party in La Jolla, opposed to going to, let's say, Tommy's party in Southeast San Diego?
You got to have your best shoes on.
Whole different mentality. But here's the thing. I'm still alert and watching. I might not give off that air that I'm alert and watching, but I'm still watching because you don't know what's going on. I mean,
unmute yourself,
they're doing drugs in La Jolla, and they're kidnapping people and killing people in La Jolla too. You know, it's not as televised. It's not something that you see happening, but you have to know that it happens. When the Claremont dude was out there running and grabbing girls, it was college students from UCSD, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, you know, there was a lot of San Diego State, UCSD.
Go ahead, Will. You gotta unmute yourself, Will.
You gotta unmute.
Unmute yourself, Will.
Unmute.
And it's like, how do you not feel salty about that? People always ask, how you feel about that as a Black man? Well, how am I supposed to feel? How do you think I'm gonna feel if I'm always being targeted and I got a target on my back? And just because of who I am, just because of how I was born in this flesh, I got a target on my back. How am I supposed to feel? I'm always be looking over my shoulder. I'm always be careful what I say. I even got to be careful with what I wear.
Yeah,
you know how many people got to worry about that, but Black and brown folk.
It's unfortunate. I want to jump into 3, y'all, before we close this out.
Go ahead, Will.
Because we can go
Will
on.
Want to chime in right quick, Sean?
I didn't want to cut anybody off. I kept raising my hand, but I want to just say something really quick. There's a difference growing up here in California than it is in some areas, parts of the country, Mississippi, Alabama. So you hear I had a friend of mine. He said, "Man, I done lost my 6th sense." I said, "What you talking about?" He said, "Man, I used to go home and look. I was at home. I look around before I go to the ATM. I'm steady looking around. There's some areas in San Diego, not necessarily East San Diego, where you just go to the ATM, get your money out, and you leave. You don't even think about looking around.
Right.
You should. But the thing is, he was just trying to share with me, since he's been here, he hasn't had to deal with the overt racism or being treated different as he did when he was at home. Because, hey, you know, the snake can shed its skin. He's the same snake. He just found a different way to come at it. So I'm just saying, you know, even though they're not in your face, they can do something on your resume or just not hire you. Don't tell you. Stuff like that. So
it happens in corporate America every day.
At some level, I believe, have had it happen to us, whether we knew it or not. I knew I should have been promoted a few times on my job. I worked in the nuclear field, and I knew just as much, but I fought to stay in that field. But they were going to cut me out of some. I just want to say it's different, depends on where you grew up at.
Yeah,
that's true. Now, San Diego is a very this is what people don't really understand about San Diego. San Diego is a racist city. It's very racist. But the thing about it, the difference is it's kept undercover a lot better than a lot of other cities and a lot of other states. But don't be fooled. San Diego is very racist.
Right. Don't let the mask of America's finest city fool you now.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot of racism that's kind of flying under the radar, you know, and when people say that racism doesn't exist anymore, that's one of the main things that we experience every single day. And like I told you, Malachi, earlier, twice, 2-3 times on Sunday. We can't take this skin that we have and shed it off at any given time. There's certain people where they may look Caucasian or they may look a certain way where they can play the role. and they may
Right.
not even speak their native language and get away with being someone else. We have to be who we are regardless. Okay, so it leads to my third question. In spite of it all the challenges that we face, be it growing up, be it who you dated, what little girl you liked, that you couldn't really go home to the family, the overt racism in corporate America when it comes to jobs, and you not being qualified, or you being the first one to be accused when something is stolen or something like that. In spite of it all, what are the solutions to us not losing who we are as Black men? Because we know that we're a target. And this will go into more topics. I'm sure we're going to continue
That's
this. But
a good one.
how do we keep from not losing who we are as Black men? The strength that's supposed to be the backbone.
That's a good one, man.
Really good, Sean. I don't know where you got these questions from, but you hit it right there. I didn't mean to cut you off, Malachi.
This big old head.
That's okay. That's all right.
I'm sorry. I'm going to say this. Inner strength, if you can call it what you want, meditation, prayer, or you have to have some time alone so that you can count to 10 or whatever, that's where I start. Because, there's sometimes I could have lost it and snapped and did something that I would be regretting today. And, just kind of had to go within myself and just to keep grounded and realize that, hey, I didn't come this far to lose it all. Just on not using good judgment, so that's how I kind of kept. Then I had my children.
Where does that inner strength come from, Will?
I have to go back to my mom. I had to go back to my roots, my mother. And I look at my mother and my grandmother and people like that in my family, and I know I say my mother, my dad was there, but not really. But I still felt their strength and their power. He was there. I knew who he was, but he didn't really input. It came from my mother, really. And then my brother, watching him, he was my older brother and things like that. Yeah. So I had to go inside myself and then I talked to somebody. I found a good confidant or something like that. So
if it's not the family structure, maybe it came from your upbringing in the church, because we know our grandparents and our parents, had us come hook or crook. You better be at church on Sunday. You better be in Sunday
foundation.
school.
Yeah, that's why I say go in yourself. It's got to be prayer, whatever it is.
We've gotten away from that, though. We've gotten away from that. And I think a lot of that structure and decisions that we make, whether we're going to snap or not, comes from that foundation. If you don't really have anybody to answer to, and you don't have anything to lose because of what you've seen people go through and the people that you've lost, it's a totally different mindset. If you don't want to disappoint the people around you and you're scared of facing them more than you are authority, it's going to make you act a little different, and it'll make you think twice before you end up doing 25 to life because of something that you reacted to. And a lot of this plays into what we've experienced and what our mental health turns into, which is another subject as well. And we don't talk about it. We don't express it. We don't get on these type of platforms and talk to each other about how we feeling, because now you soft because you're talking about your feelings, you and your feelings, but it'll keep us from doing some crazy stuff that we'll regret for the rest of our lives. And all they will say is that I knew they were going to do it anyway. I knew he was a thug. I knew he was an animal. I knew they just acting like they act anyway because they want to put a label on.
They begin to label you. Absolutely. And give you those things. And then, like, Malachi said earlier about his situation in Claremont, that was a profile. They profiled.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You were profiled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing my dad taught us growing up. Even though I didn't have the extreme situations of racism, and as you brothers are talking, so many other things are starting to flood my mind of what I did go through. And maybe I suppressed it because I was good at that. But Dad would always say, never let them see you sweat. you know, and he would always smile. He would smile through. I'm like, Dad, why are you smiling? He says, you never let them see you sweat, son. Doesn't matter what they do to you. You never let them see you sweat. You always rise above. They can only bring you down if you allow them to bring you down. And you talked about digging deep. That's one thing, that foundation that we as Black people, we have that spiritual foundation. We have that base to stand on when everything else goes astray, when everything else is going awry, when everything else is going to hell, as they say. We have that spiritual foundation to stand on because that's our rock. And as Black people, we're so emotional in that. We're very emotional people. We have to go back to our roots. And what is our roots? Our roots is that spirituality. And they always say, oh, you always talk about, that's what we are.
Yeah.
That's who we are. And I thought about a situation to where I was in this hotel, wasn't supposed to be there. It was late at night. The phone rang. It was the manager at the desk. Now, you know, what the manager calling me for at that time of night. He says, oh, I'm just checking to see if you're all right. Yeah, I'm all right. You know, I'm the one that's supposed to be calling to see, you know, hey, nothing's wrong. What's what? And within minutes, there was a bang at my door. And I'm like, okay, what's really going on? You know, whoever I was with, you know, I happened to ask, do you know anybody that's supposed to be here? You know, did you tell anybody who's here? She was like, nah. So I look out the window and it was police. And they banging on the door saying, you need to open the door. I'm like, okay. I opened the door. They snatched me out the door and hung me over the banister. And when I looked over the banister, all I heard was click, 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 click. What? And all I saw down below in the parking lot were dozens of cops with their guns pointed at me. This is another one of those mistaken identities. Are you
serious, Malachi?
With a heartbeat, man. Another mistaken identity. The hotel manager said I look like a guy that had just violated a young white girl in another community, and the girl was with them. And this is where I thank God that the prayers of my mama,
that's right,
that the prayers of my mama kept me safe, because when I looked over to my right, and I had guns on me, man, if I would have sneezed, I think I would have been Swiss cheese. And they asked her, is that him? And she's like, no, that's not him. And they let me go. They went away just like nothing. Just like nothing happened. Nothing. And just jetted. You think I stayed? Nah, man. I packed up, took girl home, and we was out, man. But
what
that's the thing we deal with.
You would have won. What if she had said, yeah, Malachi?
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right. It's unfortunate. Here's the thing. I'm proud of you for through this conversation, reflecting and recollecting those scenarios, because so many times I feel like us as a people have taken so much. We turn this other cheek and don't realize how bad the other one has been bruised. Right. You act like that's never happened. I never got punched on this side. I never got cut or hit or shot or whatever it was on this side. I never got accused on this side, you know, and you think that just because you turn the other cheek that everything is good. And you don't realize that you totally disregarded the scenario and what happened, and you don't address it.
You suppress it. You suppress it.
Yeah. But that turns into something else, though.
Yeah, that's where a lot of stress comes in, a lot of anguish. What we deal with as Black men, you know, our nerves are shot, high blood pressure, whatever else. We consider it's the food we eat. Yeah, that's one factor. But a lot of other factors is what we suppress on the inside as men, because they told us when we were young, don't cry. Be a man.
Man up, man up. Yeah.
You 10 years old, be a man. I can't be 10. I can't. I'm 10 years old. Stop crying. We're crying for girls. You know, that was one thing.
You just got your butt whooped and they say don't cry.
Exactly. You know, and here's another thing my dad would teach us. He says, a real man cries. don't be afraid to show your emotions. It doesn't mean you soft, doesn't mean you a sissy. It shows that how strong you are as a man. And that's one thing that I'm glad that this kind of format that you guys have, because we can address those issues that normal folk, well, whatever you consider normal folk, but people that don't have issues, that we as men need to share. We need to talk. We need to unloose. We need to bare our souls with one another. This is important.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this because we're about to wrap up. I know we've been on here for a minute. I will say this: if I'm sitting here listening to you guys, I haven't chimed in too much, but I'm just listening because we're at the end of everything. Yeah, we're looking. Me personally, from this thought, Candy, we're always looking for some solution. And as I'm hearing Sean say, "Hey, what can we do?" And I look to my left, because as I'm looking at the two gentlemen, Sean and Malachi, you guys set that example on what we could do. I remember Sean years ago, he said, "Man, I got to go back to school. I got to go back to school. I got to go back to school." He was doing all right at the job he was at, but he wanted to go back to school to get his education, to get his degree, to move into another level. When I met Malachi, everybody know that he's a pastor. His father was a pastor. That's where he grew up. Man, get an understanding of God or whatever you may believe in. And once you got that grounded, and once you got an education, we're talking about the Black man, and does the struggle continue? It will continue. It has continued, but I think we can minimize that if you educate yourself. And they talked about that 400 years ago. Learn how to read, get an education, stay close to God. If you got those two things right there, man, and I'm not taking anything from Mr. Stirrup at all, because I already know what he done in the military and in the government and what he's doing right now. But I just looked at you two and I said, man, that's it right there. You get yourself an education and you keep yourself close to God, man, I think that struggle won't be hard as it is for our brothers today.
That's how we can change it. That's how we can change it. As men, that's how we can flip the script just by bettering ourselves. Nobody's going to give it to us. We have to go get it. We have to physically go get that education. We have to physically go get that promotion. We got to go physically get everything, but do it in a positive way. That's the key. You got to continue to be positive in what you're getting.
We're not saying no to all of us.
One thing that you said earlier, Malachi, is about crying and not, don't cry as a man. I learned that lesson late. I didn't get taught it early. I learned it late, man. I was like, nah, brother, you can't be showing, And, I had to humble myself and let it out, because you can get a heart attack or something from that. You'll blow a gasket or whatever. But yeah, I had to learn that it's okay to cry as a man.
Yeah.
But I learned
we said that in the Macho Man Syndrome in a previous episode as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but hey guys, we can go on for another hour about this. But Mr. Slaughter, we got to wrap it up. We definitely appreciate you guys coming on. I think wish I was taking notes, but hey, we got the podcast coming out, so I can go ahead and look back and rewind this again and listen to it. So, Mr. Slaughter, if you can go ahead and end this out, sir, I definitely appreciate the topic. Very, very, very powerful topic. Appreciate the two brothers that popped on with us today. It's all yours, sir.
Absolutely. Much love to you, fellas. I appreciate you for coming through. We unpacked this as best we could and as short as we could today, folks. I mean, I think this was something that somebody should get something out of. I know I did. We have to definitely keep this platform open and empower ourselves and others with this information. We know that education is the key. We know that some religion, if you are that, even if you're spiritual, just believe, right? That helps sometimes because everybody isn't religious. We know that family foundation is key. We know that a good woman that stands behind you as a Black man will propel you to heights unknown, right? Because sometimes we don't recognize our shortcomings. What else? I mean, the list can go on, but I feel like those are some of the key things that we need to impart on you guys today. We thank you for joining us, gentlemen, and
I'm gonna
whoever.
salute each and every one of you. I'm sorry, Mr.
Absolutely.
Slaughter.
Yes. Whoever views this particular podcast right here, please comment, please like, subscribe, share. Let us know what you got out of this. There has to be another 4 or 5 parts of this because we're just getting started and scratching the surface on this thing. So, with that being said, love, thought candy, posse. We are out. Mr. Millionaire Mindset in Philly, signing off.
Love you. Ain't nothing you can do about it. Love us.
Peace.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks much.
Bye.